Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian. Josh, I got nothing here.
No, nothing else? Not some sort of desire to move your body in a certain way?
I want to dance the ballet.
All right.
That works.
Why did we do it, Josh? Why did we do that?
Well, because this movie that we're going to talk about today, it's Jason's pick for our season on the films of the year 2000. And as I told him before rewatching this, I did not recall much about the movie itself. I did, however, recall Jason, when this movie came out, saying that a lot.
While you other bums were doing, yeah, baby, and it's nice. I was just out there going, I want to dance the ballet. And no one understood what I was doing. So.
Yeah. But anytime I would ever see anything about this movie, all I would think of was Jason using that phrase, which I don't think he actually even says in the movie.
I think it might have been in the preview at some point, but I don't think he says it either. Although he did. I was going to go with, just because I like the ballet doesn't make me a poof.
Right.
Because he does say that in the movie. So,
he does. You know. And I mean, I think he says something kind of similar, but you always said it in that exact way. And I don't think he ever does.
Well, that's the beauty of art, Josh. It's open to interpretation.
Yeah, it sure is. So we're here for Billy Elliot. And obviously, Jason, this is a movie that you've long had a passion for.
I love this movie. I saw it for the first time in the theater at the Village Square, which is no longer there, with my mom. And, you know, we knew that there was buzz on it, but we didn't really know much about it. And it's like, I don't really think like, oh, it's a story about a working class kid in a very tough neighborhood in England who wants to be a ballet dancer. That's not like necessarily like, oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to respond to this. But I just love this movie. I still think it's great. It's a pleasure to watch. My daughter watched most of it with me this time. She liked it. I think they execute so many things at such a high level in this movie.
Yeah. Did you ever dance the ballet?
I am, as you know, my dance is strictly pop and lock, hip hop, twerking, crunk. Also some other things.
No, that's a good range, really, that you got going on there. I feel like you could give Billy Elliot a run for his money in other dance styles, perhaps.
I just need a disapproving family member to stare me down to motivate me.
Yeah, there you go. So Jason's certainly far from the only one who liked this movie. It was a huge hit. It grossed $109.3 million on its budget of just $5 million. So that is quite impressive right there.
Yeah, and this isn't the type of movie you think's going to break out either. It's not like, oh, this is totally such a endearing mainstream story here that everyone's going to love it.
No, I disagree. I mean, I think it clearly is a very heartwarming, crowd-pleasing kind of story. I mean, we also, before recording, talked about, and Roger Ebert even references it in his review, the unfortunate aspect that this movie is rated R because of all the swearing, and thus probably limited its prospects for family viewing, where otherwise it's incredibly wholesome and family friendly. But it doesn't surprise me that a story like this reached mainstream audiences.
And they use the word fuck like I use the word fuck in New Jersey. It's just a way to greet people and to move sentences along there. There's no real meaning beyond pleasantries.
And to the credit of the filmmakers, Stephen Daldry, the director, and Lee Hall, the screenwriter, they could easily have taken those words out and thought, hey, you know what? If we pretend that this is not how these people talk, then we could maybe get a more audience-friendly rating. And they stuck with their integrity. So I admire that about them.
That specificity I was noticing a lot in this one too. Like, you know, whenever they talk about the older brother, they never call him Tony. He's always our Tony, you know, and it's like such a British colloquialism. And I just love the specificity of it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a real place and a real time. You know, it's set in 1984 during this very tumultuous moment in history, and the miners' strike that was a huge deal all across the UK. And you get the sense that they really research the detail of that as much as maybe they looked into, research detail about ballet dancing. And both of those aspects, the specificity, like you say, makes the movie work better.
Right. It heightens everything because it all plays into each other.
Yeah. So this was also popular with the awards. It was nominated for 3 Oscars, including Best Director for Stephen Daldry, Best Original Screenplay for Lee Hall, and Best Supporting Actress for Julie Walters, who plays Billy's ballet teacher. Did not win those Oscars. It did, however, win multiple BAFTAs. It was nominated for 12 BAFTAs, so big film in its native country, and it did win Best Actor for Jamie Bell, Best Supporting Actress for Julie Walters, and Outstanding British Film at the BAFTAs.
And also, Jamie Bell was the youngest Best Actor BAFTA winner ever at that time, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, this is his debut performance. This is also Stephen Daldry's first film, although he had had a very successful career in the theater for quite a while leading up to this. But pretty impressive debut for both of them.
I think so. The amount of work that they looked at 2,000 different kids to play Billy Elliot, and the amount of work that Jamie Bell put into this, and with the director of photography, Brian Tufano, they spent like 8 hours a day together just working on the dancing and seeing how, Jamie Bell's rhythms and movements were. So he was able to craft those dance sequences, which I think everyone would agree are part of the highlights of this, whether it's the traditional ballet or just kind of the street dancing that he does. Like it's really well done.
Yeah, I mean, when the characters talk about him having this level of talent, you can buy into it, which I think is really important for any movie about any kind of artistic process where some character is supposed to be really, really good at it. If they show the audience them doing what they're supposed to be great at, it really has to be great or it kills it. There's movies where they talk about, oh, so-and-so is a great writer, and they'll show something or read something that they supposedly wrote. And if it's not up to the right standards, it really takes you out of it.
That always comes up when I watch stand-up comedy movies, right?
Sure.
Oh, this guy's a killer. He's a murderer, right? And then you watch the routine and it's like, that's what got the crowd going so much, So
yeah, I feel like in some cases, I mean, I don't think it would work here or maybe for a movie about stand-up comedy or a more performance-based talent, but with something like writing or maybe someone who's supposed to be like a painter or something, it's almost better if they don't show you their work. And so you can just infer how good they are.
I think, a movie like Whiplash takes a lot of inspiration from this and utilizes those skill sets in the right way also.
Yeah. So this movie was a hit with audiences. Again, I think this is a really crowd-pleasing film. It got an A- from CinemaScore, the audience polling service, which is a really solid score. So it's not a challenging art film, I don't think. It's a movie that pretty much anyone can enjoy.
Well, I guess I hear what you're saying, and you're right. I just don't think if you're like, hey, it's a movie about a working class 11-year-old boy who dances ballet like that, if you just hear the plot, it's not one that jumps out at you.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I mean, to me, it sounds like something, it's the opposite of it being, arty and difficult. It sounds like something that would be cheesy and contrived. And the strength of this film is that they work against that for the most part.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And, if you look at something like Coda, which also took a lot from this, right?
Yeah.
I like Coda. I know you don't, but that's why it's such a good example of doing something like this in a different way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think there's a very fine line between being able to pull it off convincingly and have it just get me rolling my eyes like something like Coda does. And there are moments here where I was doing that, but we'll get to that later. So critics also were very enthusiastic about this film. It got 2 thumbs up from Ebert and Roper. Roper liked it even more than Ebert did. And one thing that amused me is that I watched the Ebert and Roper segment, and one of Ebert's criticisms was the opposite, Jason, of what we were just talking about, that he thought that Jamie Bell didn't seem like a convincingly enough ballet genius for him to quite buy into all of it. But then he kind of says the opposite here in his written review. So he said, the movie is sort of awkwardly cobbled together, and there are big shifts in character without much explanation. Still, the movie is as much parable and fantasy as it is realistic. The character of the transvestite Michael, in particular, seems based more on wishful thinking than on plausible reality. Would a gay boy of his age in this neighborhood of this town in 1984 be quite so sure of himself? Julie Walters is spirited and colorful as the ballet teacher, and Gary Lewis is somehow convincing as the dad, even when the screenplay requires him to make big off-screen swings of position. Jamie Bell is an engaging Billy, earnest and high-spirited, and a pretty good dancer, too.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with most of what Ebert said there. First of all, Michael isn't out, as a trans person or a cross-dresser or anything at this point in time. He's doing it in the privacy of his own home. And, he's very careful to just tell Billy and nobody else. So I don't really think that point is resonant. This idea of, I love Gary Lewis in this movie as the dad. I mean, it's not a giant stretch of anywhere for where he came from. At first, he doesn't approve. It's not a macho male thing. As the strike goes on, that's what we're talking about, the integration of the strike and the music and the dancing. As the strike goes on and he sees just how bleak their future is and he sees a way out for his kid, he supports that. I don't understand where the disconnect is.
Yeah, I disagree with you on both of those points, though. I like this movie, but I think Ebert is making valid criticisms that you're right. Billy's friend, who is gay and a cross-dresser or trans in some way, is not out parading his feminine look down the street. But I mean, there's the scene when Billy kind of discovers what he's doing and he goes over to the kid's house and he just casually opens the door wearing a dress. And Billy's like, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, I'm just playing dress up." Like, the level of confidence and casualness, I'm not sure that I quite bought into there. And also just his sense of self-assurance within himself, I think was a little, I mean, it doesn't take me out of the movie and he's a minor character. And on the other hand, I'm like, well,
no, the minors are the older
thank you.
guys.
Thank you. Yes. On the other hand, I think, oh, it's nice that they're not kind of torturing this character or whatever, or turning it into some sort of grim storyline about homophobia. It's refreshing that Billy is so accepting because Billy is clearly such a good person. But on the other hand, it did stretch plausibility to me a little bit. More so than that, the change in position of the dad and the brother seemed to me like they were totally different characters in two halves of the film. I totally didn't buy it at all.
Man, that's wild, bro. You're a idiot.
Thank you.
No, I mean, the Michael thing, first of all, I think generalizing, oh, well, gay people in X time all acted the same way. It's just one dude, right? And is confident in himself and in his sexuality to the point where he even takes a shot at going for Billy, right? And then when that doesn't work, he says, "Don't tell anyone." And they're cool. He's got enough faith in his best friend to go for that, right? And then, yeah, I don't know why you don't buy the change. I mean, I think it's such a drastic situation that they know that there's no future for them as minors. And they're in a town where nobody gets out. So here's a chance for someone to get out and make a future for himself. Eventually, of course, they have to come around to accept that.
Yeah, see, I mean, I think what you're saying there makes sense in as motivation for why the dad and brother support him. And I buy into that in their character for the reasons you're saying. The idea, they clearly love him and they see this as an opportunity for him to have a better future than they did. That all makes sense. What bugs me is that that's not their character in the first half of the movie. They are so opposed. I mean, the dad is so angry and he is so closed-minded about all of it. And the brother too, I didn't buy that the one moment where Billy kind of dances up in his face gives him that complete change of character. I thought each sort of aspect made sense as a character, okay, this is how this character is. But the shift from one to the other, to me, seemed like it needed a lot more connective tissue.
All right. Well, we'll just have to disagree. I also think it might be the fact, Josh, that Ebert didn't have any kids, as far as I know. You don't have any kids, as far as you know. So, I mean, there are parents out there who are very hard on their kids in one aspect or another until they're not, right? So, to me, it worked well. But I'm just a kid from Jersey, so I understand what it's like getting out.
Yeah, I guess. It's true that I don't have. I hope that if your daughter wants to dance the ballet, that you'll support her.
I'm first going to be like, no, you got to box. So, no, of course, I support everything she
That's
does.
good. Of course you do. So A.O. Scott in the New York Times was also a bit skeptical, but came around. He said, Billy is played by the skinny, jug-eared Jamie Bell, whose convincing mixture of sullenness and innocent charm helps the movie through its patches of thinness and predictability. The first half seems almost to acknowledge its own triteness. The scenes move quickly, as though being checked off a list, and the actors inhabit their roles like secondhand suits. But after a while, the movie gains confidence in itself, and the fates of the characters, though still unsurprising, begin to feel real and consequential. Mr. Daldry, whose work in the theater has been widely praised, overcomes the occasional sententiousness of Mr. Hall's script. It helps that as the film moves along, young Mr. Bell is given more opportunities to dance.
Yeah, so getting back to him dancing, one of the points in the Ebert review is like, do we see him as a prodigy? And it's like, no. He even says, like, there's so much about ballet that I don't know. And they're like, well, they're just looking for natural talent and abilities to, mold and teach and everything. So I really did enjoy all those dance sequences, especially the less formal ones where he's just dancing down the streets of the neighborhood, which were intentionally shot in a claustrophobic nature to represent that kind of feeling of how tight and small the neighborhood is and how people don't get out.
Right, and I'm with you on all that, and like I said, I thought it was amusing that when I watched Ebert and Roper's discussion on TV, Ebert is saying I didn't really buy that he was a great dancer, and then in his review, he's much more positive about the dancing abilities. But yeah, I think you can absolutely see how he's very talented, but doesn't necessarily have all the technical aspects down. And as you say, the characters note that that's correct. I mean, that's the way things are, that the school is looking for someone who has raw talent. And that's what Julie Walters' character, the ballet teacher, sees in him. And you can see it kind of develop over time. And I absolutely appreciated that. And those little solo dance sequences, which are less polished, but show you how much passion he has for just dancing to express himself. And they did, I can't remember where I was, maybe it was on Letterboxd or something. Somebody mentioned comparing them to the Kevin Bacon solo dance sequence in the grain silo or whatever it is in Footloose. And I did think of that as well.
That's cool. I mean, those are iconic sequences, so I'm good with that.
Yeah. So
let's hear it for the boy.
Exactly. That's Billy Elliot right there.
And hey, if you haven't listened to our 1984 season, we covered Footloose, so go check that episode out.
Yeah, exactly. What if Kevin Bacon's character from Footloose and Billy Elliot could team up?
What if they outlawed dancing in this small mining town, Josh? What hope would they have with the strike?
Right. I mean, they are like Footloose is from 1984 and this is set in 1984. So really these events are occurring simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as we know, yet another great crossover from here at Awesome Movie or Billy Elliot versus Footloose.
Yeah, this small town dancing cinematic universe. Let's make it happen.
Perfect timing. This is right on the tip of everyone's tongue today.
Yeah. So as with Chicken Run, this is a British film. I thought we could get a British perspective as well. Peter Bradshaw in The Guardian said, in Billy Elliot, dance is at once an expression of yearning and a symptom of frustration. Mrs. Wilkinson is described as, quote, unfulfilled. That's why she does dancing. Julie Walters could so easily have given an over-egged and gamey performance as the gutsy mentor, and it is a measure of her intelligence as a performer and Daldry's assurance as a director that her approach is kept within bounds. There's a very good sequence where she and Billy do a dance routine that she's devised for him to I Love to Boogie by T-Rex, and this scene nicely complements a later moment where Billy does his own dance of rage in the street when his dad forbids him to dance again. It is a spontaneous choreography of frustration, which hovers between the world of realistic drama and the stylized world of the musical.
I also pulled a quote from a British reviewer, Josh. This is from HR Penny Farthing. What's all this then?
I thought for a second you were going to actually offer some insight on the film, but I appreciate your mockery of British people.
Julie Walters, awesome, right?
Yes,
She's great, and she's great in everything. She's just like and so I mean, one of my elements that I feel like where the film kind of fell off is she's so prevalent in the first half of the movie, and then we don't see her barely ever. We see her once, and they make an explanation for it. But I wanted more of her presence in there because those two really, really cook together, really dance together, Josh.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think to me, part of that kind of went along with the idea of not buying into the dad's sort of change of heart as much, whereas the teacher has been in his corner the whole time. And their conflict where he is like, stop pushing me, or, my family doesn't want me to do this. And she's like, no, you have to. And you get the sense that it's at least in part based on her frustrations about what she never did with her own life. Like that, I fully bought into all of that drama. And it really is disappointing that she just kind of disappears once the dad comes around and the dad becomes the one who's supporting him and taking him to the audition and all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I know they give an explanation in the movie with the dad saying, like, he's my son, I'm going to do this, right? But I agree. I wanted her there. And, spoiler alert, the last scene where we see adult Billy dancing in Swan Lake, and you're in the audience with Tony and Michael and the dad, and, she's not there. I know that it was because they couldn't schedule her to come in, but like you wanted her in the audience. That was an earned moment that she should have been there for.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is a bit of a disappointing element. But another thing that Bradshaw points out here, of course, I guess would go to the legacy, but even without knowing that this became an incredibly successful stage musical, you watch this movie and there are definitely moments where you expect the characters to break out into song, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I know my grandparents loved the musical. I have never seen it, but speaking of that, this is one of the highlights for me. Like, this soundtrack was basically made for me, right? You have T-Rex, you got the Clash, you got the Jam. This is all stuff I love, and I think that kind of anachronistic approach really works here.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, as we said earlier, a pretty small budget film, and I imagine that they allocated a good amount of that budget to getting all of those very, very well-known songs on this soundtrack.
Josh, do you like to boogie?
No, I do not.
Do you like to how do they say it? Boogie? Boogie.
Regardless of how you pronounce it, it's not for me. It's not for me.
When was the last time you danced, Josh?
Never.
Really?
Probably.
You've never danced?
I mean, maybe I've sort of like, swayed a little bit when I've enjoyed listening to a song. But, well, no, you know what? That's not true, because when I was in middle school, I was forced to take a cotillion. So I did dance then under duress, but not on my own free will.
Did you go? Was at the end of this class, was there an actual cotillion?
Yeah. I mean, that was it. It was I think when I was in 5th and 6th grade, I want to say. It was like one semester or one quarter or something of PE was cotillion. And so we did that during those periods in school. And then, they had a little dance as the culmination. But again, it wasn't like a fun school dance. It was like homework, and you had to go to it.
And did you go to middle school in the antebellum South?
Right. Yeah.
Is that why you took it?
No, it was in Southern California, but it was a kind of fancy private school, I guess. And I hope they don't do it anymore, because it really was kind of an outdated, old-fashioned thing to make these poor kids do. But yeah.
Right. And then you got, you're doing the dancing, and it's like, you got to get the consent to touch your partner, right? And that's weird in like 8th or 5th grade when they're just like, no, go dance with that person.
Right. And I mean, and I remember it being very specifically regimented between the boys and the girls, which I'm sure nowadays would not be something that people would go for. So I have not looked into whether the school continues this tradition, but I do hope that they don't.
So if you want to learn cotillion, hit up Josh on any of the socials, and he'll teach you all the cotillion.
No, I'm not going to teach you to waltz, or I don't even remember what other dances we did, but the waltz was definitely a big part of it. So
See, Dave, he does like to boogie.
No,
Oh, yeah.
no. I don't think you could call waltzing boogieing anyway. Really does not fall under the boogie umbrella, I don't think. So, Jason, you said you saw this in the theater with your mom. That is lovely. And I don't remember if I saw this in the theater or not, but I certainly saw it at the time it was released, like on home video or whatever, because it was such a big sensation. It was nominated for all these awards, and I liked it at the time. But like I said, it made less of an impression on me than Jason's impression of it. But I was happy to revisit it for this podcast. Dave, did you see this when it came out?
I did not. No, I was going to, just because of how big of a hit it was at the time, but it just didn't really appeal to me that much, and I'm glad I finally got to it, though,
Dave, you seem like more of a dancer. You're a musician.
You'd be surprised. But yeah, I think I've danced probably more recently than middle school, though.
Okay, well, that's good. So
I like to dance. I don't know what's going on with you two.
Well, as we established, you have multiple dance styles in your arsenal there.
Yeah. We didn't even get to like hyphy or any of those. Rise. You remember Rise, that documentary?
Mm-hmm.
I was supposed to be in it.
But could you waltz?
If you teach me, Josh, I think I could maybe handle it.
Let's not. I feel like I'm still traumatized from those classes. Anything else about the background of this film you want to mention, Jason?
Well, you mentioned Lee Hall, Josh. This is based on his play Dancer. And I have a quote from Mr. Hall here. I wrote the movie of Billy Elliot when I was still a neophyte playwright. I was trying to find a way of telling my own story, but in a visual way. The first image that came to my mind was a kid jumping up and down on the bed like I used to do. Once I had that bit, the whole thing about dance just came tumbling out.
And this movie was originally titled Dancer, but it was changed to avoid confusion with Dancer in the Dark, a slightly less positive, upbeat film.
Yeah, complete opposite feeling movie, right?
Yes. But both, I think, were playing festivals at the same time, so it made sense to separate them out.
Hall was inspired by Circa Lisa Condonen's book, Step by Step.
All right. Did you read that book?
No. I don't even know if it's might just be pictures, Josh.
Oh, well, yeah. Even Dave could read it then.
Yeah.
All right. We'll come back and talk more of our general thoughts on Billy Elliot. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of the year 2000, we are talking about Jason's pick, Billy Elliot. And I feel like we've said a lot here already, but Jason, what is it that makes you love this movie so much?
So Josh, quick correction. It's Peter Darling, the film's choreographer, who worked with Billy 8 hours a day to kind of get the dancing, not Brian Tufano. I'm a big fan of British movies, that, and I'm a big fan of like kind of the working class. I'm a champion of the people, Josh. This one just all came together for me. It's funny. I like ballet movies more than I think about, because you would think in like Darren Aronofsky's like canon, The Wrestler would be my pick, but I think Black Swan is definitely my favorite of his films, which has nothing to do with this other than ballet, Josh. But I love the music. I think everything's motivated. I think the pacing all works. I think these are really, really obviously strong British actors who have experience both on screen and on stage. And I found it all motivated. It all worked for me. So, and I think, we always talk about like lived in environments. This really felt like a real environment here. So that's a short list, Josh.
Yeah, I think that lived in aspect is a big, big strength here. And the decision to set this not only in the small town, because you could have set this in the year 2000 in a small working class town and still basically done the same story, but to set it during this period of the strike that was, such a heightened period of turmoil for the country and especially for these miners, and battling against this presumably huge corporation and, spoiler alert, losing their battle.
It's not a spoiler alert from history,
right? Well,
Josh.
sometimes it is. Sometimes, I certainly wasn't. I mean, I would imagine that people in the UK are a lot more familiar with this history than we are, but I wasn't familiar with this whole particular period necessarily. But I mean, I think that is what elevates the movie from just this kind of predictable story about the kid who wants to dance and his family disapproves until they don't. And so I liked that aspect of it. And I liked, and I think I didn't remember how much time they really spend on that storyline. It's not just about Billy, it's also about his father and his brother and their struggles in the strike and their conflict with each other, the brother being much more kind of strident about the union and about his principles, whereas the father is a little more pragmatic, like, look, I just need to make money for my family. And even though I think, I don't know if it was Ebert or one of the other critics also criticized the moment where the father, once he has decided he needs to support Billy, actually even attempts to go be a scab and work in the mine, even though the union's still on strike. That seemed to me to be maybe a step too far. And I appreciated that he ultimately doesn't go through with it, that the brother comes in and kind of pulls him back. But at the same time, that is emblematic of the difference between them, those characters, that you can understand that he is the one who would at least even entertain the idea of going and working behind the back of the union because he needs to support his family.
Right. Well, a few things about that. Like, he's already chopped up his dead wife's piano, which she obviously loved because they needed to heat the house.
Wait, was that why? I thought he was chopping it up because he was mad about Billy dancing and didn't want music.
No, they used it as firewood at Christmas.
Well, they did, but I didn't think that was, I thought that was just like, well, it's there, so we'll use it.
I didn't think so. I thought it was, hey, we have no money and we need to, I mean, he has that breakdown at Christmas, but again, it's open to interpretation. I think that is you're right. Like, that scene's important though, where he does that, where he breaks the picket line, right? Because, you're showing a different generational perspective of like, the young guy can hold out because he's young and, he's not necessarily, he doesn't have the same responsibilities, right?
Right.
The dad at that point is like, I got to do this for my other son. So the motivation is there. And when our Tony stops him, Josh, the dad has like a huge breakdown, like an emotional breakdown of like, I can't believe I almost did this. I'm glad you stopped me. So all of that works. I do want to say one thing that I kind of think they blew it was, so this whole thing is, we go through this journey with the family and with Billy, and the dad and Tony finally come around. And then the dad takes him to the audition at the Royal Ballet Academy, which he had missed a few weeks before because Tony was in jail for striking and, just causing havoc. So they go, he does the audition. He thinks he blows the audition. We have this great waiting period where like, did he get in? Everyone in the town wants to know. Everyone's asking. They get the letter. They're waiting for Billy to open it. It takes him forever to open it. So you have all this tension. Then he gets in and you have this beautiful release where the dad is running down the street and like jumping and he's so happy. And you want that moment to last. And he goes into what I guess is like a bar or a union hall to talk to his friends. He got in. And then they're just like, didn't you hear? The strike's over. We're going back to work. And it's like, I wish they would have separated that beat. I wanted the dad to have that victory. And as an audience member, as we're going on this journey with him, you want to feel that a little more before we kind of push to the next thing.
I guess so, but I feel like part of the point of that scene is that you want that, and that's not how life is, right? I mean, yeah, okay, it's a bit convenient that both of those things happen at the exact same moment, but the point is that even when something good happens for these people, they're still beaten down by this corporation, right? And that even these moments of joy can't fully be appreciated because of the drudgery of the life that they have as minors that maybe, hopefully, Billy will be able to escape. So it did feel contrived. I'm with you on that. But on the other hand, it felt like part of what they're trying to say with the movie. And that was why it was important.
Yeah, no, that's a fair way to look at it. I just wanted that moment. We're dealing with a lot of heavy stuff here over and over. And for the dad, especially, you want the dad to have a victory, right?
Sure, you do. But I think that's the thing, is that you want that. And the filmmakers know that you want that. And they want to show you that you can't have that, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's a fair way to do it. So, by the way, we keep calling him the dad. And of course, that's not his character's name. It's Jackie Elliot, not the dad.
Well, but Billy and Artoni both call him dad, and that's how we know him, and that's his function in the story. I mean, they give him extra dimensions, but ultimately, it's about being Billy's dad is what he's there for.
That's true.
Yeah. So, I wanted to mention. I mean, we talked about Billy's one friend, his gay friend Michael, but the other friend that he has in this film, who's the daughter of Mrs. Wilkinson, I liked their relationship as well, and I think that it's sort of showing you two sides of what Billy is dealing with or whatever, and she kind of has this crush on him, and he seems to maybe feel the same way, but is not really sure how to handle that. I mean, they're very young in this film. And so it's appropriate that they don't really like lean into the romance angle per se, but I liked her, and I thought her very matter of factness about everything, about her crush on Billy and just about dancing and his abilities or whatever was refreshing. So I enjoyed her as a character as well.
She's so funny too.
Yeah.
I think because of that matter of factness, there's like that innocence, right? Like, if you want, I'll show you me fanny,
Right.
Just those little things, and her talking about the breakdown of her parents' marriage and everything. Just really good stuff there. And I do like that both she and Michael are talking about like different aspects of their parents and, just how every family has secrets, right? It's really interesting. But yeah, she was great. And I mean, all the acting, I think, whatever you feel about this movie, every actor held up their end on this thing.
Yeah, the performances are very strong. And I think that helps, for me at least, when I'm thinking, I don't quite understand the character motivations here, but in the moment, the actors really sell whatever it is that the characters are feeling. And so that helps it be less frustrating, I think. But yeah, all really good performances here. I mean, Jamie Bell, it's like he's gone on to have a really big career, and you can see why that he would, because he's got such a presence here, even at such a young age, and even in his first performance. Like, it's like the Harry Potter kids or whatever. You think that search really worked out well because they found the right person.
I think we see it the best in his relationship with Julie Walters' character, right? He's got this kind of like whimsy and like this kind of cheekiness where he knows he can get away with stuff, right? And like, he the way he talks to her is like he's got that sly smirk and get off your blob, just saying like little things that maybe he shouldn't be saying to her. And he's like, you don't fancy me, do you, miss? And her response is so well done with that deadpan, like, no, Billy, surprisingly enough, I don't fancy you, right? Like, so, right, we already talked about like her disappearing was kind of a bummer, but those two, when they have scenes together, and you put that review you mentioned where they do the dance to I Like to Boogie, those are real highlights of the movie.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that they do really well with that is that they show you that she really has taught him a lot, that you can tell at the beginning, he's clumsy, he doesn't quite know what he's doing, and maybe he has that raw talent and he has that enthusiasm, but he really doesn't have the like fundamentals of it. And you can see that progression over time as they work together. There's a great montage where he's learning to pirouette, the kind of spin move or whatever. And there's the cross cutting between him with her and him kind of like in his bedroom and also in like the bathroom looking at the mirror. And you can see it's a great way of showing the progression of time and also his development of like mastering this move. And I thought that's something that Daldry does really well throughout this film.
Right. And we'll talk more about Stephen Daldry. In this one, he really threads the needle. In some of his other movies, it gets a lot heavy-handed. Right?
Yeah, this is definitely like, I mean, it's his debut, but it's the highlight of his career, I think.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, I picked the movie, so why wouldn't I agree?
Right. Well, it was a good pick. So, Dave, what'd you like about this?
I mean, I like the music. I like that it's just, a nice movie. It's fun to watch. I wouldn't say that much really kind of stood out to me. It's just like a nice, easy watch, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing that you can think of as like a comfort movie, right? I mean, even aside from that moment, Jason, that we mentioned about the triumph being kind of undercut, overall, this has this very warm, feel-good tone to it that just gives you this, nice feeling.
Another fun one, rainy day, just sit down on the couch, cuddle up with your loved ones, Josh, watch the movie.
Yeah. Is that what you do with this movie?
Yeah, I did.
Right.
I watched it with my daughter. It wasn't raining, but I watched it with my daughter, and of course I like to, when we watch movies, we cuddle, that's nice.
Yeah,
So,
that sounds lovely. That's it's very sweet. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing to me, is that it's a well done version of something that ultimately is very cheesy, is very sentimental, and that I think there's only so much you can do with this kind of formula to win me over. I'm never going to love a movie like this necessarily, but as far as this thing goes, it's well done. I mean, the plot remains very predictable. You could have taken other swerves with it, but
in lesser hands, you would have hated this movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's versions of this. I mean, I can't think of now, but I'm sure if I was...
Well, we mentioned Coda, which I like,
Sure.
but you don't like.
Sure.
And I think, and I think the criticisms of the sentimentality of that are valid. It worked for me, but I get it why it wouldn't work for other people.
To that point, Jason, the first time you were on Piecing It Together, you brought this up on Blinded by the Light. This was one of your puzzle pieces. So
yeah, I mean, these are, thank you for memorizing that, Dave. That's what an honor. But no, I mean, I made a little list that we could talk about in the legacy, because I like these movies, these working class movies, whether it's America, Britain, or anywhere else, where people are stuck and they're trying to get out. I mean, dude, I don't know if I've mentioned it before on the show, but Josh, I am a Bruce Springsteen fan. And I mean, what's half of his music about, right?
Yeah.
Right. And Blinded by the Light is one that I do enjoy. But I think even more so than Coda, which I did not care for, I'm sure there are other versions of this that I like even less than Coda. And I think you're right that it takes a really strong director and a strong writer and strong performers. Everything has to be calibrated just exactly right for this kind of story to work and not drive me crazy, because it can get so heavy-handed and so manipulative that it accomplishes essentially the opposite of what it's meant to accomplish, that instead of making you feel nice and happy for these characters, you hate the characters.
Right. And it's a different tone, but I think, even mentioning the name change from Dancer because of Dancer in the Dark, and the manipulation and the sacrifice, which, is unnecessary, that really takes you out of a lot of that movie.
Yeah. I mean, that's in the opposite. Obviously, that's not a movie meant to be heartwarming. It's sort of meant to be heart deadening, I guess. I don't know, heart killing.
No, yeah, it's the opposite, but it's a different way of, utilizing a sacrifice of a parent for a child. And that one, it didn't work for me. And in this one, it totally works.
Yeah. I mean, Von Trier, as we talked about in that episode, is very, very, that's his thing, is being extremely heavy-handed. And I think it worked more for me in Dancer in the Dark than it did for you, but certainly I wouldn't deny that movie is just pushing its buttons really, really hard.
Yeah, I thought the spot where it might not work for you, which it definitely worked for me, is when Julie Walters tells Billy Elliot to bring in 3 important things, and he brings in, these kind of aspects, these kind of keepsakes that are sentimental, including the letter from his mom before she died. And I thought, that gutted me when I saw it in the theater. I still think it's an effective scene, but I could see for you where you might not go for that.
Yeah, I mean, I was okay with it. And I feel like that's another thing that they could really have pushed on a lot harder. And another kind of movie maybe would have the idea of his dead mom and, his sort of communing with her or whatever. I mean, we have that scene with the letter. And what I thought was nicely done is that, I mean, the content of that letter is kind of basic sentimental stuff, but we see Julie Walters reading it out loud. And at a certain point, Billy starts not reading it along with her, but just reciting it, where you can tell oh, he's read this so many times that he's memorized it, because this is the only connection that he has left to his mom. I thought that was nicely done. And there's one scene where he kind of imagines the mom talking to him. And on the one hand, I probably could have done without it. But on the other hand, again, I could imagine another movie where that would have been a constant presence, and it would have been really overdone.
And he's 11. I get that. I mean, I do think they utilize her well with the motivation of Jackie and also our Tony, right? Because our Tony's always talking, whenever Billy asks him a question, it's just fuck off, right? And then at the end, they're in the bedroom and he just turns and he basically says, "Mom would have let you go to the dance school, right? And it's just a really nice little reward there that you get.
Right. I mean, they're all grieving, obviously, in their different ways, the loss of the mother/wife. We see the dad break down, as you said, and obviously that's taken a toll on him too. And he doesn't show it in the same way, but it's just as hard for him as it is for the kids. And I think we get that eventually.
And Josh, I do want to rate this thing, but I just wanted to say I also like the relationship that they all have, well, really Billy and the grandma, but also Damien, the Jackie character and the grandma, who's the dead mother/wife's mother, right? And she's kind of on her way out, and whether it's like dementia or Alzheimer's, she's kind of losing it a little. But they have that great moment where Billy goes off to the dance school and like she just pulls him in and hugs him, and like, she knows, that's probably the last time she'll see him. But also like it's worth it. And I've had those moments with my grandmother, so those really resonated. And she's again another really, really strong actor.
Yeah, I mean, we have her. It's a nice relationship, and even though it seems like because she's maybe not all there, they sort of dismiss her, but she's constantly talking, or not constantly, but brings up consistently references like, oh, I could have been a professional dancer. And, even though nobody really pays attention, it's like, oh, maybe that's kind of where he gets some of it. Like maybe there is talent running in this family in some way. And maybe she's not just saying random stuff. Like maybe she really could have been a professional dancer and nobody pays attention to her. But it's a through line in the film.
Right. Dave, T-Rex, bangers, bro.
Good stuff. Yeah, I said the music's my favorite part.
Should we rate it, Josh?
Yeah. How you want to rate this?
Well, Josh, I want to rate it out of 5 ballets.
Right. Perfect. I just wanted you to say it again.
It gets 4 from me. I'm guessing you guys didn't rate it as high, which is cool, but I think I'm enjoying that we all, it's a type of movie that, like we said, in other hands wouldn't work. For me, it works great, and I'm glad it worked for you guys. 4. Obviously I picked it. High recommendation for me.
Yeah, I give it a 3. I mean, I do like it. And I think especially if you like this kind of film, if you think you would like this movie, you will like it. Like it's a very good example of this. I think it has some flaws as I've gone through, but overall I enjoyed it. So three ballets for me. Dave, how would you rate it?
I'm also going 3. Perfectly enjoyable movie. Just not like my favorite or anything.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back then in a moment and talk about the legacy of Billy Elliot. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of the year 2000, we have been talking about Jason's pick, Billy Elliot. And as I briefly mentioned, I mean, to me, the biggest legacy of this film is Billy Elliot, the musical, the stage production, which I think has maybe eclipsed the movie in terms of pop culture presence and success. It launched in 2005 in the West End in London. It is written by Lee Hall, who, as we said, is a playwright more so than a screenwriter. So he wrote this with music by Elton John. That original stage version of it was directed by Stephen Daldry, who also came from this theater background. It ran for 11 years in the West End, premiered in 2008 on Broadway, where it ran for 4 years, was nominated for 15 Tonys in the year that it premiered and won 10 of them, including Best Musical. There's been tons of productions all around the world, touring versions. I think this is something that continues to be revived. So I've never seen it. And like you said, you haven't either, but I think people know this almost more than the movie at this point.
I think you're right. I would like to see this show, obviously. But I think as being a legacy point of that is Jamie Bell has really delivered on that promise that you said. And, we see kid actors who do great things and never go on to anything. And Jamie Bell kind of took a little while to find where he fits, but he's doing really good work.
Yeah, he is. I mean, and I think to that point, we mentioned his friends, Billy's friends, and those two actors, Stuart Wells and Nicola Blackwell, basically did not go on to have any kind of acting career after this. And so I think that goes to your point that a lot of times kid actors, and I think we've probably talked about this before, where you watch a movie, an older movie with a kid actor and think, wow, what a great performance from this kid. And it's just basically a one-off because a lot of kids, they, you don't want to make your career choice when you're 10 years old or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, Jamie Bell has had a great career as an adult. He's in a lot of like major blockbuster type things like King Kong and The Adventures of Tintin, but also acclaimed, artsy films. I mean, he was just in All of Us Strangers, which was a hugely well-received movie. And he's really very, very good in that film, essentially playing, weirdly enough, like the dad role from Billy Elliot in that movie.
Oh, that's awesome. I got to watch it. So he's in Fred and Ginger coming up, and I think he's playing Fred Astaire, if I'm not mistaken. So that seems like a totally natural fit for him.
Yeah, I mean, and he was cast. I mean, that like casting call was not only about finding kids who could act, but also kids who could dance. So he had that dance background going into this as well.
The biggest thing for me, and I know we've kind of talked about it in a few different ways, but the biggest thing for me is like when you watch the dance, you get the exuberation, right? And like the full release, and that this is less of a hobby and more of a calling. And I think that was such a well done aspect of the film.
Yeah, I mean, really effective there. And as we said, Stephen Daldry, unlike Jamie Bell, who I feel like has really delivered on the promise that he shows here, Stephen Daldry, I mean, in terms of his success and awards nominations and stuff, he has. But,
huge success.
But in terms of actual quality of his films, not as much. I mean, he really has gone on to become this director of kind of middle brow awards bait. I mean, he's been nominated for Best Director Oscar 3 times for this film, and then also for The Hours and The Reader. His most recent film as a director is called Together, which was a sort of COVID lockdown movie, which I never saw and did not really get particularly good reviews. But I mean, I think of something like Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, which is just like the version, as we were sort of talking about, the bad version of this, right? With a terrible, annoying child actor performance. And it's like really sentimental and really cloying and really manipulative and just drives you crazy.
Yep, I agree. And The Reader, that's what Kate Hudson won her Oscar for. And I thought, that's what I meant. Kate Hudson won an Oscar for Almost Famous, which we might talk about this season, Josh. But I meant Kate Winslet. But I didn't even think that was her best performance of that year, because I think that was the same year of Revolutionary Road, which I really thought she crushed in there.
Yeah, I don't remember liking either of those movies particularly well, but they were very popular with the awards voters.
Stephen Daldry has 3 Tonys. He has an Olivier Award, like you said, the 3 Oscar nods, an Emmy for The Crown, which he produces, and I'm sure directed some. And he just, if you thought the last show, I mean, if Billy Elliot was a huge hit, I think his next show is also going to be a big hit. Stranger Things, The First Shadow, which premiered, I think, last year in England.
Yeah, the stage play that adapts, or I don't know if it doesn't adapt Stranger Things. I think it's an extension. It's a prequel or something like that.
It's about a demogorgon who wants to dance the ballet.
I wish that it was, because then I'd be more interested in it. But yeah, I think that is set for an upcoming Broadway premiere. And that's just one of many. Like, he continues to have a very successful theater career, not only with that and the Billy Elliot musical, but with other things as well. So there's a lot of big gaps between his films. And I think in that period, he's busy directing stuff on stage.
Right. And like we talked about with Jonathan Glazer, right? It's different, but they're all doing things all the time. Josh, as far as award winners, you don't get many more awards than what Julie Walters has had. She's got 4 British Academy Television Awards, 2 BAFTA Awards, 2 International Emmys, a Golden Globe, an Olivier Award, an Oscar nod for Best Actress in an Educating Reader, and an Oscar nod for Supporting Actress here. And she does little movies like Harry Potter and Paddington. And so she's doing okay.
Yeah, the Mamma Mia movie is also another franchise that she's in that's very popular. And yeah, I mean, she's not usually a lead, but she's someone that you always are happy to see pop up. I mean, we talk about those kind of quirky the very specific genre of the like working class British people do something that you don't expect them to do in order to like save their town / family or whatever. She's in that one Calendar Girls where the middle-aged British ladies do the nude calendar. And, it's not the best example of the genre, but it's fine.
She always delivers no matter what you put her in. Josh, in that genre, do you have any favorites?
I mean, the Full Monty is like the one, right? I haven't seen it in a long time, but that's like the like originator of this, right?
Yeah, I think the Full Monty. I don't know if it's the originator, but that's the most well-known one. And that's a great one. I would also recommend Brassed Off. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have not.
High recommendation. Pete Postlewaite plays like, again, I think they're all minors, but they have like a brass band and they go, they got to raise the money to go to the brass band competition. And, the story, but it's another really well done one. And Pete Postlewaite is an actor. Most people know him from The Usual Suspects, but he's really good in this movie. I would watch that movie again too.
Yeah, I feel like this is also weirdly like a genre where it lends itself to musicals. I mean, in addition to the Billy Elliot musical, I think about Kinky Boots, which is another one where I think the stage musical has like far eclipsed the film that it's based on.
Right. And they must have done a Full Monty.
I think so.
Musical,
yeah,
right?
I would think so. Yeah, but maybe it hasn't been quite as successful. And I wonder if we're going to get Billy Elliot, the musical, the movie. You would think that is one of those that would make that transition like things like Mean Girls have in recent years because it's been so popular.
I'd watch it, but I'm not really I'm not really pushing for that one.
Yeah, that's fair.
Josh, I think though the important point you were touching on is like, not only that, this setting of this kind of British blue collar town where the union has been broken and like the recovery, which took years and years for these, these communities as the mines closed and everything, those backgrounds lend themselves to these uplifting stories and music a lot, as an escape.
Right. I mean, and I think music or performance is often a subject of those films, whether it's the dancing here or the brass band, like you said, in that other film, or another one that I think of that was more recent which is a musical, was Everybody's Talking About Jamie, where the working class British kid wants to be a drag queen and is, there's disapproval until he, wows everybody. And that was a fun one. I mean, it's very predictable and very sentimental, but it has some good songs and it's an enjoyable watch.
Gary Lewis, I think really great as Jackie here. Gangs of New York, Super Volcano, The Marvels. He's a working actor, a ton of TV stuff, but I really like him. I would, I wish he was doing more film stuff, but I'm happy he's working a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and he's one of those guys, you look through his credits and there's all like, oh, I think I saw that, but I'm not sure. Like he just kind of disappears into various roles, whether it's working class British guy or like space captain or whatever he's playing in the Marvels.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I just also wanted to say, we mentioned Brian Tufano directed a photography for two great Danny Boyle movies, Trainspotting and Shallow Grave.
Yeah, very good films. Lee Hall, the screenwriter, like Stephen Daldry, has had a very successful theater career, more so than screenwriting, but has certainly done well as a screenwriter. War Horse, the Steven Spielberg film, Rocket Man, which features Jamie Bell in a major role, and his most recent screenplay credit for Cats.
Oh, yeah. Well, didn't he also write the Get Up, Stand Up, the Bob Marley musical, which I'm guessing they based the movie on that just came out?
I mean, I think he did write that, but I don't think the movie is based on it. The movie is not a musical. I mean, it's not a music, like it's got Bob Marley music in it, but it's not a musical like that.
So disregard everything I said and we'll stick with Cats.
Yeah, Cats, the greatest achievement in human history. So anything else you want to say about the legacy of this film, Jason?
I've never danced ballet, Josh, but I think it's about time I start.
I look forward to that. Maybe a Patreon video of Jason attempting to dance the ballet.
We all want that.
Yeah, we definitely don't. So that is Billy Elliot, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can dance up on us online and on social media.
Yeah, invite Josh to your cotillion at awesomemovieyear.com, Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on the closed coal mine of social media platforms. I'm Jason Harris Comedy, or Jay Harris Comedy, on all the things. So find me, and if you're on Letterboxd, go for Jason. Tag Awesome Movie Year.
Indeed. You can find some old stuff from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I am at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, and at Signal Bleed on that cesspool X Twitter, as well as on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd. And yeah, if you watch any of the movies that we talk about on the show, please tag Awesome Movie Year in your review. We'd love to know what you think.
And also, if you like this genre, please let us know what movies we didn't discuss, because I want to watch more movies in this genre.
Yeah, let us know. Jason's all for it. And if you want to know about movies that relate to other movies, you can listen to our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Thank you, Josh. That was a good setup. Yeah, you can find Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, we are going to Sundance for one of the two winners. We are going to watch and discuss on this very podcast, Josh, Kenneth Lonergan's You Can Count on Me, which at the time that it came out was a really big deal, but I don't think people really remember it all that much right now.
Well, we'll remind them of it. So tune in next time for You Can Count on Me. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.